Hi, Deb.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. Good.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much for spending some time with me today. And thank you, church, to those of you who have joined us. Um, we want to kind of just take a few moments today and tackle a topic that some of you are right in the throes of walking through right now. And that is how to walk with our parents through the process of them aging and even as they die. And it's such a difficult season of life. I see a lot of people in our church just looking for wisdom of how to walk through this time well. And so grateful that Pastor Deb can kind of share some of her story and some practical tips on how we can navigate this season.
Yeah, I don't know about the wisdom part, but definitely I can share my story and hopefully through that, maybe parts of it people will resonate with. Um, but each of us has a little bit differently, right? Because we're dealing with different personalities, different hurdles and obstacles along the way. So
Yeah,
where should we begin?
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, we should start at the beginning, I guess. Yeah, my journey's probably been going on for about 10 years and it still goes on. Um, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease before that, probably about 15 years ago. They didn't really share that with us until it became a little bit more obvious that something was going on. Um, and so I would say I just happen to be going through some of my dad's things right now, and I can see 2010 he was fastidious and meticulous in his filing system, and in 2010 everything fell apart, and that was about the time where we had to step in and start helping out with and addressing some of the things that were going on. And my mom's actually a year older than my dad, so she was aging as well. And my parents were both very fiercely independent, didn't want to burden anybody kind of people. They loved doing their own thing. They were big travelers, very involved in their church and in ministry, as my dad was pastor and professor, and you've had kind of a similar upbringing to me. And watching them age and starting to notice things that, oh, this isn't sitting well. And as things went on, realizing they are unaware of how bad off they are, and even wondering things like, how did the house not get burned down or whatever. It seems like when you've been married for years and years and years, you compensate for one another, so where one was weak the other one was strong, and they kind of stepped in. And a lot of covering up, and my mom covering up for things that were going on with my dad and whatnot. And so I guess what I want to say overall, just to start things off, is it's just hard. There's no way around it. It's just hard. So, what you have to figure out is how you're going to navigate it and walk through it. And as we were joking earlier, or you could run away from home. I mean, that's one option, bow out. But most of us really love our parents and want to see their final years spent well and comfortably and be enjoyable years for them. And so we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen for them. So for the last 10 years for me, it was watching both my parents age. It was watching my dad, especially, slowly disappear. It was watching them resisting the reality of what was actually going on. And I needed to say that my parents were extremely organized in getting their final years worked out for us, so that as the kids, we wouldn't have to be dealing with things. So even them who planned ahead and got all their funeral arrangements, bought plots, got their finances in order, their wills, and all of that, they still were resisting the reality of what was going on. They were still of the mind of, that's still 10 years away. We're fine. Don't worry. Um, having to pull the trigger on my dad and report after 3 car accidents that he was unfit to drive, and seeing the devastation that he went through of having his independence taken away when they took his license away, the depression that he went into, um, the personality changes that come with Alzheimer's. My parents, again, super grateful, positive, optimistic people, and seeing them become complaining and resentful and things like that, and going, who are these people? um, and then helping them move from their home to a townhouse, and then their townhouse to a care home, and then moving my dad into residential care. And you're on, and you're looking after all this stuff, taking on their finances and all of that. And then at the same time, all that's going on, you've got your own kids to raise. And we were both working. Walt and I were both working. Our kids were that age, teenage years, involved in hockey and soccer and snowboarding and social things and piano lessons and guitar lessons, and we're driving them everywhere, and I'm driving my mom and dad everywhere, that because to their doctor's appointments and things like that, trying to go to work. And so it felt like my life and my independence were being taken away from me as well. So that just took a big shift in where I spent my time and how to divide that so nobody gets ignored. And then just grieving my parents, um, realizing I was losing them slowly but surely. And then another thing that just with her, which was not good. I think it's a little better now. I mean, COVID's a whole other ball game, but there were a lot of things going. Well, we'll get to COVID later, um,
They have to.
but yeah, yeah, let's forget COVID. We're done with that. The healthcare system was already in trouble, and we were trying to navigate that, get the proper care for them at the proper price tag that they could actually afford. And that was playing hardball and emotionally draining. And I have stories after story of, saying I refused to take my father home from the hospital after he'd fallen for the 10th time. I will not take him back home until you find a place for him. And, just so it's a lot. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't know, what people will resonate listening to this, or if you're all sitting there going, oh, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It sounds overwhelming,
Yeah.
as a person who has watched um, their grandparents walk through this, and my parents aren't there yet. It just sounds absolutely overwhelming. And there's some threads I want to kind of tease out from what you just shared, Deb. And the first one is that aging, for both us and our parents, sounds like a very humbling process. And when you talk about there being, instances of one spouse trying to cover for another spouse, or just this anger or this depression at the loss of our independence, it just sounds so humbling. And even when we think of some of the things that we might have to do for our parents, helping them get into the washroom, and help, things, helping them shower and bathe, things that we don't, when we think of our parents, we think of them as strong and capable, and they used to bathe us. We aren't thinking that we will then turn around and bathe them. It's a humbling process.
It, you're absolutely right. That is a perfect term for it. Um, and it's, yeah, you never pictured yourself in some of the situations. And I will say this, if we're married, it's not just my own parents, but your spouse's parents as well. So you can have two, three, four of them that you're juggling all at the same time and trying to deal with. And so yeah, Walt's dad was aging. His mom passed away quite young, but his dad was going through things. And there are some things I have to say where I would do for Walt's dad that I did not feel comfortable doing for my dad, just because of that relationship, right? And so it is an interesting time. But and my mom, because She didn't have Alzheimer's, but she was getting dementia as well. And so it was difficult for her to understand that my dad had a disease. She just thought if he tried harder, if he made himself a list, if he and so she would be upset with him a lot, and that was hard to watch because my parents had a fantastic relationship. So and my dad could sense she was mad, but he had no idea why. And trying to so people with dementia and Alzheimer's, they pick up on the moods and the tones. They just don't understand why they're not making the connection. So yeah, it is all very humbling for them as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also just the longing for dignity. It
Yes.
seems like our parents, you know, are longing to age and still retain their dignity. And sometimes the caregivers, you as the caregiver, may be so overwhelmed that you're looking for efficiency, right? Because you have children and then parents and whatever else is going on in your life. Sometimes you're also, your spouse has needs as well that you're trying to mitigate for, and you as the caregiver may be going for efficiency and how can I get the most done because I have all these needs spread out in front of me. But
Yeah.
maybe the question, if we're thinking through the lens of our parents, is how do I help them age with dignity, even in the loss of their independence and as they are being humbled
Yeah.
and brought low?
Yeah. And that I think that should be your primary goal, to be honest, is helping them age with dignity. Because I know with my parents, if they knew how they were coming across, or sometimes like my dad, I'd come and his hair was just sticking out everywhere. And
Hey,
I'm
you
like,
guys
oh,
here looks like that every day.
he would just be mortified, if he knew. And so I would pick the comb up, comb his hair. I'd get the razor out. I'd be shaving him and things like that, and just helping them exactly. Yeah, have some dignity. And so, and the other thing that happened, I think I want to zero in on two emotions that probably prevailed for me through this whole thing. Because what I was finding is our conversations with our friends, we used to always get together and talk about our kids, and now we get together and we talk about our parents and compare notes. So
Yeah. Wow. So sorry, Deb. This lovely thing about working from home is we sometimes have interruptions at the door.
okay.
So I'm going to pause you just for a second. Okay, Deb. So you mentioned two kind of primary emotions that you kind of deal with when you're in this journey with your parents.
Yeah. So let's be clear, grieving permeates everything. So that's just always going on in the background, grieving the slow disappearance of your parents and the way family used to be. And when we used to all gather at my parents, my mom would love to just have everyone, the grandkids, and she's cooking for everyone. So you're grieving the loss of family time and things like that. And I think for people who don't live near their parents, like yourself, it's grieving or feeling badly. So my two emotions were guilt and fear.
Hmm.
And so maybe it's the guilt that you can't get there and look after them because you're here and they live there, and things like that. My parents lived here. We all lived in the city here together. But I was perpetually feeling guilty,
Hmm.
because if I was with my parents, I felt guilty that I wasn't with my kids. If I was with my kids, I felt guilty that I wasn't at work. If I was at work, I felt like I was ignoring everybody. If I was so wrapped up and overwhelmed with my parents and whatnot, and I wasn't spending time with Walt, like it was just this perpetual cycle of guilt, which is very unhealthy. I have this predisposition to guilt anyway. So this doesn't bode well for me. But it's also the guilt of I didn't enjoy my visits anymore. And I didn't look forward to going and seeing my parents because I knew it was going to be just a struggle to have a coherent conversation. Now, some conversations were hilarious because they made no sense at all. But a lot of times you're just repeating over and over and over again. And then my mom, even though I would tell her up front, Mom, I have a half an hour and I can come and I can take you to do this and come back, but then I have to go back to work. Well, she always wanted to make me lunch or take me for lunch. And why didn't I have more time? And as they progressively got worse and we had moved them into their care home and everything, she was started to pull the "you never visit" card.
Hmm.
And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm here 3 times a week. It just, and there were times I left and my dad would say too that this is a terrible way to spend your final years. I'm in a prison. And see, this is not who my parents were.
Hmm.
And I would sometimes drive away and just cry all the way home because I thought, you have no idea how many hours a week I'm putting into fighting Fraser Health. Oh, probably shouldn't say which healthcare system. Um, and fighting that, trying to get everything in order so they have a comfortable, enjoyable life. You don't know how much I'm running around on your behalf and how often I'm coming to visit. And I just feel lousy all the time, never doing enough. And like I said, I'm predisposed to guilt, so I probably take it harder than many other people. But that was one thing. And the other thing was fear, because watching my parents age, you suddenly become aware of your own mortality and you realize I'm not getting any younger either. And this whole process is aging me radically. I can't keep up with this. And you start feeling the fear of what's going to happen to me. You
Hmm.
know, who's going to take care of me? Will my kids come visit me 3 times a week? And I don't want to put that on my. I told you earlier too. I said, yeah, they got out of town. They all moved away before it looked bad.
Yeah.
But like, who will take care of me? And then what if I'm like that what if I lose my mind? And children of parents with Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
everybody I know, we all fear it. We're all look if I can't find a word, I'm like, oh no. Oh, or if I've misplaced my car keys for the dozenth time, and then I remind myself, no, I've been doing that my whole life.
No, that's just something that's permeated all of life.
I've
Is we've lost
always
our
done
phones
that.
and our keys, our wallet.
If I can't remember where I was 5 minutes ago, actually, that's something that, or why did I come here again? But you start second guessing everything like, oh no, what if I'm getting Alzheimer's? And what will I be like if when I lose my mind? And you start thinking about your own aging process and how many years do I have left. And I remember when I turned 50, I said, wow, 25 years ago, I was 25, just got married. We had our whole lives ahead of us and it went like that. And in 25 more years, I'll be 75 and they might not be as good years. I might not be healthy or, and the clock starts ticking and you start thinking about things like that. And so there was this fear factor that crept in to what will my aging process look like? How long do I have?
Yeah, and I have friends as well who don't have a nuclear family around them, and I think they have this added layer of fear of, will I be alone?
Yeah,
Not only will my kids not visit as frequently as I would like, but I didn't have biological children, and who will be there for me?
yeah,
And fear just steals our joy in the present, doesn't it? It doesn't matter. It's like we're pulling anxiety from the future and inviting it to invade our daily life, and it just steals our joy. And
yeah,
so when you talk about guilt and fear, I mean, these are emotions that affect us hugely. And at the same time, you're trying to do a lot of caregiving and a lot of pouring out, right? So that's a really tough space, for those of our friends in our congregation. They might find themselves in that exact same place that you're speaking of, Deb.
Yeah. And it's a rough place to be. There's we owe it to ourselves and to our parents, and actually I think to our kids if we have kids, um, but to sort through that,
Hmm.
and to be able to slog through that and come to a place of acceptance of this is my life. This is the way things are. Most of it is beyond my control, so I have to quit worrying about the things that I can't control and start looking at, well, what can I control? What can I put into place in my life, to bring back the joy and to prepare for when I grow old as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think even just recognizing those basic stages of grief, and sometimes we don't understand, we might be responding in frustration, and someone else in our family might be in depression, or they might be denying the reality of what's going on, but it's all grief. And
Yes.
just recognizing that you are going through something, your parents are going through something, and that um, even though you are doing a lot of the caregiving, you also need to be cared for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And so, uh, on the side of our parents, how do we help them age with dignity? How do we love them for who they really are, and not maybe how their personality is changing? And maybe that's something you could speak to just a tiny bit of, when you're seeing those changes, and perhaps parents are becoming belligerent or more difficult or ungrateful. How did you kind of process through that, looking at the whole and not just this moment?
Yeah. I had to constantly remind myself that it's well, for my dad, it's an actual disease he has. It's the same as if someone has, it's not the same, but if someone has heart disease, diabetes, there's you're not in control over your body, so, and it's the
Mm.
same with his mind. So just to remind myself that he can't help it, and I put things into place in other parts of my life in order to have the patience and love for my parents. So that self-care component. And so you can get into this cycle of just doing for everybody else, and because whatever it is that drives you, in my case guilt, right? And there are some things you can't avoid, you just have to do it.
Mm.
But you have to remember to take that time back. And so whatever is overwhelming you and causing you grief, guilt, fear, anger, whatever it is, offset that. Make sure you spend time with friends who are life giving,
Mhm.
that they're not draining you as well. And so you find those people that you can just be you. You can rant if you need to. You can avoid talk. We're not talking about this tonight. We're just going to have fun. You've got to find those safe people and make sure you're pouring life into yourself. For me, prayer and really relying on Jesus. The two scriptures that became very important to me was just the come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light, and sharing that burden with Jesus and just repeating that. And the other was, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And
Mm.
so just remembering that faith, you've got to nurture that aspect, um, and nurture your friendships with other people that pour life into you. And fresh air, like getting outside and going for a walk, does so many things for your soul. The vitamin D from the sun, in the rain, you just put the umbrella up, but to get outside and just and take steps back. And that it's okay to say no sometimes to your parents and their desires, and what they're wanting, for just for their sake as well, so that when you're present with them, you are present with them.
Hmm.
You're not like, "Oh, I don't want to be here. I've got a million other things I need to do." But taking care of your soul and nurturing your spirit and your other friendships and relationships, so that you can be present with your parents and give them the dignity that they deserve.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think to myself too that, for those who are prone to guilt, especially when it comes to um, the subject of our parents, you cannot give more than your best. And so if you are giving your best, um, you shouldn't you should question that guilt, because it might be just an emotion that is not leading you towards truth, right? If you are giving your best, it's
Right.
impossible for you to give anything more than that. And
Yeah.
your best is all that you have to give.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've come to know is that what our best is changes in different seasons of life
Mhm.
based on all the other responsibilities that we have, right? And so maybe you're looking at yourself and saying, I should be able to do more. When I was 20, I would have been able to do more. And the fact is, you're not 20 anymore, and your life is different. The circumstances that we're in are different. And so, even questioning what our own best is. Um,
Yeah.
and instead of just kind of sitting in those feelings, but to say, I'm giving my best, and the Lord in His grace is going to fill in all those gaps that I think it's only me and that everything has to be done by me. No, that's not true. I bring my best forward, and then I need to ask for, support from those around me, support if there's other siblings in the picture, if there's friends that are like family in the picture, but also just to, again, like, bring that as a matter of trust to the Lord and say, this is all I have to give, and it will be enough, because the world isn't actually on my shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. And and repeat that over and over to yourself, and remind yourself. You touched on something a little earlier about how other people deal with things might be different, and it got me thinking about siblings. And so, along with giving your best is all you can give, we have to ask for help.
Mhm.
And so, first of all, if you have siblings, they need to be brought into it. And we do deal with things differently. So I was more in the beginning stage, more the hands-on, in the thick of it. But sometimes our siblings are in denial. It's not that bad. Oh, I don't know why they're fine. Don't worry about it. Or sometimes it is that the anger, somebody else is angry about it or whatever. But we need to ask our siblings for help, and if they're unable, then we need to be able to have people in our lives that we can ask for help. Like, maybe they can't help us with our parents, but maybe they can go pick your kids up from school for you while you go do something, and it's okay. It's part of life, and I think that's a beautiful picture of the village coming together and caring for one another, and helping out with our kids and our other members of our family. So asking for help, and I'm bad at that, and I know it. And so it is a humbling thing for me to say, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And it's okay.
Yeah. Well, Deb, would you speak to us a little bit about what it was like when you lost your dad?
Hmm. Um, it's funny. It was such a long, prolonged disease, but when he died, he did it very quickly.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for that. And so the gift in his death, it affected me far more deeply than I thought, because I felt like I'd been saying goodbye to him for years, and
Mhm.
I've been grieving all along. And so I was quite surprised by my strong emotions when he actually died. But the gift in that was when you're talking to people, and letting them know. that he passed away, everyone has a story. And one thing Walt and I were really worried about with our parents, because we were feeling the pressure and we were feeling the resentment sometimes, and we were just so like, I can't believe this has happened, my parents, that that they're like this. We were worried that that's the image we were going to be left with of our parents,
Mhm.
but it's not. And so when I was telling people about my dad passing away, they all had a story about him. And it was so wonderful to hear how he impacted their lives and how he affected them. And my dad was quite a character with a great sense of humor. He was silly and childlike at times, but with a brilliant mind and such a deep theologian and thinker, right? And so I go, that's the man that I am grieving. That's the man that I miss so much. And so it was very healing to be able to go back and remember. And it's why I think it's so important to have some kind of service or memorial, so that family, we always hear it's not for the dead, it's for the living. And it's true. It just is, because it's part of our grieving. And COVID has impacted that. And so, I really want to encourage people, if you are losing one of your parents during this time and we're so restricted as to what we can do,
Mm.
do something, even on a small scale, even like this via Zoom, and have an evening of sharing stories or whatever, because we do need to honor them and we need to grieve and remember, how they shaped us and the impact they had on our lives. So his death happened before COVID. We were able to celebrate him, which was wonderful. But at the end of the day, realizing that he is with Jesus and he is fully healed, um, and that's all we ever wanted for him. So um, I wanted to just put some practical things out there a little to help people, because I don't want to go on too long if people are like, all right, wrap this up now. Um, um, just to make it, there's nothing, we can't anticipate everything, and we can't anticipate when certain stages are going to happen. But if your parents have already put into motion some plans for their final years, get your hands on them, have that family meeting, and or at least with your parents, and find out what their final wishes are,
Mhm.
whether it's according to their health and the different orders you can put into place ahead of time, or their finances, their wills, um, you know, where they want to live. For my parents, they went into a care home and an independent care, but then they made sure to choose a home where my dad could go into residential care and they're still in the same building together. Like, find out all of that stuff, get all the affairs in order. Some of my friends have, my parents were great that way, but some of my friends have had parents who didn't want to talk about it. And I feel like you have to insist on that. Um, with dignity, with honor and respect for them, but to help them, gently help them understand that it's actually for our benefit more than theirs. That we want to be able to honor them. We want to be able to know how to treat them with dignity, what dignity looks like for them,
Yeah.
and that we can prepare that for them and help them experience that in their old age. So getting all of that in order ahead of time. I'm already thinking about doing it for my kids now, because we don't know, right? Just to make sure they know, even know where all the passwords are and things like that, so they can access your bank accounts and stuff like that. So just having a plan, because siblings can disagree on levels of care, final wishes, like things like that. And we all have our own opinion about what that would look like. If we know what our parents want, our parents get the final say, not us
Mhm.
trying to figure it out. And it saves a lot of pain and arguing. And so I feel like that was a gift our parents gave me and my brothers, because we have just, even though we all approach it differently, we all agree we will do what our parents told us. And
Mhm.
so it's been as smooth as it possibly can be among siblings.
That's great. So have
Yeah.
the family meeting. That's number one. Have the family meeting.
Fascinating. Yeah, and push your parents to get their affairs in order if they haven't already,
Mhm.
and then we already talked about the self-care kind of thing, just pockets of rest, release the guilt. You are enough, you are doing your best, and um, remembering that they, if they have dementia or what, they don't know that this is what you're going through. They don't understand, and that's okay. Just
Mhm.
find that outlet where you can talk about that to somebody, and then really find community resources so that
Mhm.
everything doesn't land on you, whether it's handy dart, or you can get cabs where you put $200 in a credit and call the cab, and they don't have to worry about paying for it because it's already paid for. Um, and yeah, just be gracious with yourself and accept that you can't do everything and that what you're doing is enough. And um, and this time will pass. My mom is still alive, and Walt's dad is still alive, and my mom has now gone on the other side of dementia, where she knows who we are, but she lives in her own little world of cooking dinner for us, and she's thinking that we're coming over for dinner all the time. And we have wonderful conversations about the most ridiculous things. And and she's in full residential care now. And so the challenge now is COVID more than anything else.
Yeah. Which we're all in the same boat with that one, but it certainly
Mhm.
makes seeing our parents or grandparents when they're in a residential care facility or whether they're living independently, it makes seeing them very, very complicated, which then adds to the guilt. But
Yes.
I would, and also the regret of missed opportunities. It's not just guilt, but it's loss of relationship that you could be having in that moment, loss of support for them.
Yeah.
But again, I want to come back to we're all doing our best. If you are doing your best and you are doing all that you can, um, yeah, just pastorally, my mind goes to for those of you who are still with us and listening to this conversation. It may be that you're noticing, some of these different things that we're talking about, whether it's guilt or fear or resentment or exhaustion. And if you're saying, yeah, that's where I'm at today, I just would encourage you to pause. And if you're a Christian, to ask the Lord to speak to you about putting some more support in that place or reframing the perspective so that these emotions, though they are real, don't steal the joy out of your daily life.
Yeah. Name them, like acknowledge them, don't shove them down,
Yeah.
but then acknowledge that, yeah, they they don't have the power over the joy. Can I just say one thing about our parents that I've come to, um because COVID is, it's that beast. It's stolen a lot from all of us.
Yeah.
And me, who has a love-hate relationship with technology, have I've come to really be grateful for Zoom and for FaceTime, because I can talk to my mom via FaceTime. They set it up for her, and also to my kids. So embrace that. But with our parents, they are far more resilient than we give them credit for. Now, they might be angry about things, and they might be lonely. I'm not suggesting that they're not experiencing these things, but if I think of what my parents, the scope of their lifetime, and the depression and World War II, and all the changes with that went on in our world with technology whipping, but like just things that they have seen in their lifetime, and the things when they were young. I'm talking about this particular age group right now that is aging, or in care homes and that. they're far more resilient than we give them credit for.
Mhm.
They've seen a lot. They've endured a lot of hardship in their life. And I think they are, for the most part, a grateful bunch of people.
Mhm.
And they understand life and death better than we do. We resist. We don't want to get old. We don't want to talk about it. They understand it better than we do. And ask for their stories, like
Yes.
listen to their stories, let them just talk about when they were young. And for my mom, that's about all she remembers is when she was young. And so, but let them talk about that because they've seen a lot and we can learn so much about from them.
Yeah, that is, and that's just a wonderful way to dignify them is to share those family stories, right, and pass those along to the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deb, for taking the time to share part of your journey and your story and some practical wisdom of what you've learned. And we just appreciate you so much. And for those of you who are walking through this season right now, if there's any way through prayer or conversation that we can support you, you know where to find us. Please reach out because I guess the main thing we want you to know is that you're not alone and that this is a journey all of us inevitably must walk with our parents, and it doesn't make it easy, but you're not alone.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Deb.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.